Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 100 Pounders meeting of Overeaters Anonymous. My name is Rita Q, and today is the 12th of November 2025. I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome Kendall M to our meeting. Kendall's first day in OA was November the 11th in 2020, and he lives in New Jersey now, but he's formerly, originally from the Chicagoland area. So I'm going to let him share his experience, strength, and hope. Over to you, Kendall.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. Before I get started, I just want to take a second to center and pray. Thanks everyone for being here. God, help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, this disease, about compulsive overeating, about my own recovery, and especially about you, so that I can come to know you better in all of these things. Please help me to see the world through your eyes in the present moment. Amen. Okay. Hi, my name is Kendall. I'm a recovering compulsive overeater. Grateful to be here today. This meeting was my first meeting that I ever attended in OA on November 11th of 2020, and I heard a 100-pounder speak here, and I immediately identified as a compulsive overeater, and it really, this fellowship saved my life. And so I want that to be upfront with what I say, because I really felt like I came in here without the will to live, and I left with some hope that I didn't think was there. I came in alone, and because of this program, I now have the gift of walking with a loving higher power. A loving God is with me all the time. And I'm really grateful for that. So as a result, one of the things I want to say too is a disclaimer. This is just my experience in the program of Overeaters Anonymous and with the literatures that are provided. Your mileage may vary. I say that only because I don't want to ever sound like an expert for OA. If it sounds like I'm saying something that doesn't sound aligned with the traditions, steps, or concepts, please credit it to my head and not my heart. My intention is to offer something that's been given to me. And so with that, I'll just show a few pictures just to give an idea about background. I am a compulsive overeater, and this is just a very brief overview of the pictures that I don't actually have many of them from my childhood. I avoided cameras like the plague. As a kid, I was really shy. But one of those things here was, here's me as a child, and the progression here. I was always obese. There was never a time in my life that I was not. And there's always a little bit of a sadness behind my eyes that I always noticed because I just never really felt a part of. There's my teens. This picture is from 10 years ago. This is probably near my heaviest. My highest recorded weight is 482 pounds. But this picture is probably a little bit lower than my highest weight. This is probably 450, 460 or so. Because shortly after this time, I'll get into my story, I would lose a bunch of weight and then I would gain it back with interest, which is something I always did. I always lost weight and gained more. And this is a picture of me from July. And then this is a picture. I was at a retreat center just a few weeks ago, and that's the most current picture I have of myself. And that's all I really have of pictures of myself. But I will talk a little bit about the data, so to speak, of being in recovery. As was said before, I came into the program November 11th, 2020. I was struck abstinent that day because I hadn't eaten anything yet before I went to that meeting. So it really changed everything for me. I don't say I lose my abstinence. I gave away my abstinence September 3rd of 2021 because I am a relapse survivor, and I reset my time. And I've been abstinent since September 4th of 2021. So I've been abstinent 4 years and a couple of months now, and have had a weight release of 200 pounds. And this program saved my life, as I said before. I'm going to talk about what it was like in the disease, what happened as a result of working the steps, and what it's like now. Uh, in sharing my story, I want to stay in the present moment. So I really want to put in some time and talk about what life is like right now and living in recovery and what problems and solutions and what struggles and joys and triumphs and those things that are really happening for me today. Because I find that when I share in the present a moment and when I share in real time and I share honestly, I find that that's what helps people. It's not so much talking about how great things are, or it's also talking about what happened in the valleys, what I'm struggling with today. So um, I'll just spend a couple minutes talking about what it was like. Like many of us, if you identify as a 100-pounder like me, I feel that this disease took on. I feel like this disease started from probably from birth. I've always had some sort of reaction to specific substances, but specifically, I remember as a kid was flour and sugar, high flour, high sugar, fat content items. Uh, Desserts, cookies, really were particularly. And I remember when I ate them, something changed in me, and it did something for me. I grew up in a high anxiety home, and there was always this low level noise, this chatter, this anxiety, and it was only quieted when I ate. So I kept eating. Um, you know, Not to talk about the entire family situation as a whole, but there was a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I didn't feel a part of. I didn't feel safe and protected. And as a result, I felt safe and protected when I took food, and particularly when I removed myself from situations and got by myself and fantasy. So reading tons of books, television, media, like surrounding myself with ideas and stories and kind of separating myself was really a big part of my disease. Um, at the same time, once I was using food as a solution in my life, it was the way that I could be a part of with other people. It kind of took the edge off. So I quickly learned in my life that God had given me a number of talents in my life, and as part of His performance, and I could easily talk to lots of people when I had the food. I could get to know people. I could anticipate their needs. I became what I would call at the time a people pleaser, which I don't use that term anymore. I was a kind manipulator. I was really nice to people, but I would just do what I thought that they would do. I did what I thought that they needed me to do so that they would like me. That was really important to me. For people that teased me, because as a multiple 100-pounder, there's a lot of there are a lot of opportunities. I've broken chairs, broken beds, broken toilets. I've been kicked off of an airplane before for being in more than one seat. There are a lot of things that happen, and I'm not a fight person. I'm not a flight or freeze person. I'm a fawner. So I would just I would make friends with my aggressors, and I would talk about them and gossip about them behind their backs. That was the only tactic I really knew. And I knew from a young age that if I was going to be fat, I wanted to be smart, funny, rich, and powerful. And my joke was always that all I got was funny. And, like I was always able to read a room and thrive off of being able to connect to people because I thought that somebody else had what I needed all of the time. I thought I never had what I needed. I was never enough. That was my fight, was to do more, to be more, to collect more knowledge, to collect more of everything. And so that also included the food. So I want to fast forward through all that stuff. What happened just before I came into the rooms, 2 years before I come into the rooms, in 2018, I went through diabetic ketoacidosis. So my blood sugar I was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, and my blood sugar was over 600. I had to go to the emergency room. My A1C was over 12. I couldn't see straight. My tongue had gone dry, and I was dying. And they had to do procedures to me to get my blood sugars to regulate. They had to put in an IV into my arteries because all of my veins had collapsed. And when I was at my lowest, the doctors were telling me, like if you continue down this road, you're going to die. And so the first thing that I did was I had a lot of self-knowledge. I talked to those doctors about, well, about insulin resistance and about what diet I was going to do, and that I was going to lose 100 pounds and that they would never see me again. I was determined. One thing I've always had is really strong willpower, and I lost 100 pounds in 6 months, crash dieting. And then I picked up those substances and I gained 130 in 7 months. And so I was defeated. I looked into getting bariatric surgery, but of course, at the end of 2019 and into the beginning of 2020, of course, COVID happened. And so I thought that was my last shot, and I just ate to die. I figured I was just going to die, and that was it. And it was a really depressing time. I will just backtrack and just to say, as to identify, I said it earlier on, but I've always been a person that's lost weight but gained it back with interest. I've tried almost every diet that exists that I have been able to be aware of. If I could read about it, I went and found it. I tried all the pay-in ways. I've tried all of the ones where the mail-in, they mail you your food, and all you eat are these prescription things. I've binged on eating only the things that contained my substances of those boxes of food and thrown away the rest. I have eaten those special shakes while getting fast food. It was this disease has been all consuming. It was all consuming. All I thought about was food. Even with the relationships and everyone that I was around, food was always there. And so somehow at the end of 2020, something happened. It was a long time coming. I realized the thread of where program came from me came from my first roommate in college was a member of a program around narcotics in 12-step recovery, and he told me that I talked about cookies, how he talked about drugs, and I stopped talking to him for a year. I was so angry that anybody would dare identify me as a compulsive overeater, as an addict, because there were addicts in my family. I saw myself as better than them, and that I had avoided all of these problems because all I had was this food thing to figure out. And that was my experience. And then I had a friend who was in Alcoholics Anonymous tell me about the program and say, well, there is this place for people that eat how I drink. And even in that, even more gentle identification, I didn't talk to her for a few months, but she's now, thank God, is a very close friend, and one of the first places that I was able to visit when I was visiting abstinently and when I finally started traveling again. And then I looked up an OA meeting, and this is to say nothing about a higher power, but it was in a place where I was never going to go. It was in a church, and I was never going to step foot in that church unless I was getting paid. I had problems with religion. I saw many people in religions and saw spirituality and relationships and religious stuff with people with God as just people that faked it. I saw them live their lives one way and then show up in church another way, and I wanted nothing to do with them. And I thought that also meant I didn't want anything to do with God. I would come to understand in recovery that I didn't have my own experience with the God of my understanding. I just had experience with what other people had told me and what I had saw other people were doing. And it was going to be important for me to have that relationship. That would come in time, but November 11th, 2020, I don't know why, I logged on to this meeting. I broke a chair that day. The chair I was sitting in at the time broke the gas canister that slid down, and I really just felt awful. And I come into the meeting, and my first thought is, what is this even going to help? I don't know why I'm here. And there was a small voice that I'm convinced was God today that said, what's it going to hurt? Just go to the meeting. Just stay at the meeting. And I heard someone tell my story out of her mouth, and I immediately identified as a compulsive overeater. So what happened was step one, was realizing that I was powerless. I was done fighting food. It also scared me. I cried for a long time after that meeting because of course I don't want to cry on camera. I want to look tough. I want to look like everything's okay. I got off camera, I cried, and I threw away hundreds of dollars worth of food because there was almost no food in my house that was safe for me. I was abstinent. I understood that I had the gift of abstinence at that moment because I hadn't eaten any compulsive foods or engaged in any of my compulsive food behaviors, like grazing, like licking and cleaning the insides of the pans that I would cook on, eating the food off the top of the trash, eating food that was in the back seat of the car. I see my 15 minutes. Thank you for your service, Kevin. I saw, these other activities, these things I wasn't eating in my car. I wasn't going to gas stations. I wasn't eating the foods that I would soon know to be alcoholic for me. I was given by one of the folks here, one of the lovely folks that was in this meeting, first time gave me a worksheet to go through my binge foods. And I wrote down all of the foods that I realized were my foods, and I knew that I could never eat them again. And so I went through a process of grieving my food, of realizing that I could never go back to it for the effect. I knew that if I picked up certain foods, I was trying to get high, just like a drug addict. I was trying to get drunk, just like an alcoholic. I identified in that way. And so what did that mean? Step one meant, okay, it meant I have no business fixing my food. So the first thing that I did was I committed to another fellow before I got a sponsor. I committed to just eating 3 plates of food with nothing in between. And they were gigantic plates, but they had a start and a stop, and I did not compulsively eat. I knew that my meals had a start and a stop, and that's what I did. And until I got a sponsor, the woman who shared her story gave me the phone number for the person who is still my sponsor today. After I listened to his lead and asked him for his help, I worked the steps with him. And so what happened is working the steps. In step 2, coming to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, I had to get real about my relationship with God. I needed to say everything I thought God had been for me before and say that it wasn't enough. God, where were you in every single situation in my life? Where were all of these things? Where were you? And what I realized for me was that I had not actually asked where God was before. I had not sought God. I had assumed God was not there. Well, my parents said this thing. My friends said this thing. Those folks in church said this. But I had never actually asked for myself. I did not have a prayer life. I did not have an experience of trust in a power greater than myself. One of the first places that showed up was in these rooms, was in OA, and calling people. So in using the tools, but particularly with the phone, something happened. When I wanted to pick up, and I wanted to compulsively eat right away when I came into the program, like right away after day 1, I was just like, I'm going to pick up. And people kept saying, call before you take that first bite. And I called, and every time I called someone and told them I wanted to eat, I did not eat. Every single time I batted 1,000 at that thing. I knew that that was true. So that was a power greater than myself because there was nothing different within me. Something was outside of me and was connecting in that phone call. There was something that was happening. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I knew something was different. When I went to meetings, I no longer wanted to eat. So I started going to meetings and making phone calls my business. I was going to 3, 4 meetings sometimes a day for my first month because I wanted to eat 24/7. I would go to meetings in the middle of the night. I would call people in the middle of the night, and I would call people on WhatsApp because, in the UK, when I want to eat at 3 a.m., it's 9 a.m., and they can tell me to go back to bed. I needed that help. And another place that a power greater than myself showed up was in the love and care of my sponsor, a place where I could share my feelings without condemnation. He didn't represent God. He wasn't God himself, but he represented an avatar of a mirror to see that I was loved and that I was accepted and that I was no longer alone. I didn't feel alone anymore once I came into these rooms. And in step 3, what was important for me was when I turned my life and will over to the care of God, that meant that I made an agreement to work the rest of these steps. And something that my sponsor had me do on a regular basis is in the literature, particularly a lot of my first time through the steps was through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wrote out pages 60 to 63 in how it works in first person. And then I took the third step prayer. And then we set about a vigorous course of action of doing the inventory, of seeing what was going on and working steps 4 through 9 to get to 10. Um, and to, of course, work 10, 11, and 12. Um, thank you for your reminder here for 10 minutes. Thank you. Um, one line that I want to go back to is in We Agnostics. It's on page 55. It says, actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It was the understanding that there was something within me that I had access to now in working step 3 that allowed me to take a fearless and searching moral inventory. Going through the process of working 4 was arduous. I did do it quickly because I was convinced by the literature. It says that if I don't do this, that I'm going to drink or I'm going to eat. And if I eat, it means I'm going to die. If I'm going to die, it means I'm going back into that 480 plus pound body. But not just that body, I'm going back into that mind. I felt like the Walking Dead when I ate. Every time I ate compulsively, I felt like I had no connection to anyone or anything. I couldn't go back there. And so a determination to get away from that fear, is what I think was part of the propulsion to work the steps. What I learned about myself was that my mouth and how I thought about things and people were the cause of most of the consternation in my life. I was constantly giving advice to people, telling them things that they should do. And it was like when I gave my 4th and 5th step, I found that I'd basically done a reverse golden rule, which was like everything that I thought was going to be done unto me, I did unto others. I thought people were going to steal from me, so I stole. I thought people were going to lie on me, so I lied on them. I thought that I was going to be abandoned in relationships, so I abandoned people first. And then I realized that I could not abandon myself because I was an adult. I realized that I was left not with everything in my life that happened to me as a kid was not my fault. It was my responsibility because I saw the patterns that showed up. And so when I gave my 5th step, there's a point in the book when you sit quietly for an hour and you get into gratitude and thank God and you look at the propositions. I had my spiritual experience then, and from that point, I had a belief, and I still have this belief that God is real and that cannot be moved from me. Something happened there, and it cannot be swayed or convinced in any other direction. God is real, and it's the most essential, important part of my recovery. That higher power that is with me, that's loving, is never judging, is gentle, is firm, but kind, and always never condemning, always accepting. That my higher power, my God, always wants me here. Something that is a phrase that was said to me when I was a kid is that, God loves you and there's nothing you can do about it. That unmerited favor, that grace, like God's grace is on me at all times. It does not let me go, and I don't let it go. And so after working step 5 and getting into 6 and 7, looking at my character defects, one of them I talked about, which is manipulation. Another one was, hypervigilant control, also known as perfectionism. Self-righteous judgment was up there, particularly on issues of politics and social issues I loved to argue. And going into steps 8 and 9, realizing that the work that needed to be done, a lot of the amends that I needed to make and conversations that I had with family members, with my parents, institutions that I had to pay money back because I had stolen software, I had stolen so many things, and justified it because they were of less moral value because of what they were doing to society. I had all of these stories in my head. And so as I got to know others in this way, every amend didn't go perfect. There was one amend where I made the amend and the person said that, you're the same guy that I remember. and I never want to speak to you again. He said it with some language that is not appropriate for being recorded, but I'm the villain in someone else's story. And so what's important for me to remember is that I've been given an opportunity to repair my relationship with others through the help of God. That doesn't mean that reconciliation doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen every single time. But I got to clean up my side of the street and have a new way of looking at things. An important part, which isn't directly spoken about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but shows up in some of our OA literature, is the idea of the amends to self, which is something that I did as well. And I wrote down all of the things that I had done to myself, emotionally, physically. Thank you, Kevin. I wrote down all of the things that I had done to myself emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally, and wrote down, most importantly, what I was going to do. And so that shows up in my action plan. And so those things, and some of those things were telling the truth in real time. Not hiding my feelings, being present with people in conversations, avoiding other people. Not necessarily avoiding, but going a different direction with the relationships, like just not going into certain conversations, particularly political ones, staying above the fray. I'm particularly now in a line of work in my life where I'm walking with people who are diametrically opposed on so many different issues, but my job and a part of my life is talking to people about where does higher power show up for them. So I'm doing a disservice to my higher power by trying to tip the scales towards whatever I think is supposed to happen in this world. I'm supposed to ask people to reflect. I feel like God has given me the opportunity to share with people and to help them see where they can see God. And I think that's one of those gifts of program. I want to take the last minutes to talk about where I'm at today in my recovery. What's really important for me is in step 10, is particularly on page 85. It's this idea of we've ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, or food. I still fight a few things. I still fight about my action plan for the day, how much work I need to get done, what I'm doing with music or what I'm doing with my friends and family and relationships. But I'm fighting a whole lot less. The other thing, though, is that the line on page 85 is that we feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. The gift of working the steps is that I am neutral around food. I don't want to go away from this without talking. I have a daily reprieve where food is not in my general issues. It's not in my purview of a problem today. It was always a problem. The first time I realized that I was neutral with food, I could have cried then. I was on an outreach call just vomiting everything that was going on in my life. I see the 2-minute warning. Thank you, Kevin. I was just vomiting everything that was going on in my life, and the person on the phone had 20 plus years of abstinence and said, when was the last time that you thought about compulsively eating? And it stopped me dead in my tracks. I had not remembered that I stopped thinking about food. And so the problem had been removed from me. And the only time that I get less than neutral is when I'm not working these steps. So, I do have an experience of relapse, and what happened was I still believed God was real, but I stopped asking God for help. I stopped praying and meditating, and I stopped doing 10 steps. And it took a number of weeks after that, and then I stopped making phone calls, stopped talking to my sponsor honestly, and then I picked up. So the relapse had started months before. And so now in my program, it's very important for me to get honest in real time with as many people as I need to, but most importantly, to go to God first. In the 10th step, it talks about continuing to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. So asking God first, then talking to another person, making an amends if I need to, and then going about the day and being in service. So talking about step 12, being able to speak and share my story is a part of my step 12 work, but most important is that every moment of my life for people in and out of the rooms, I have to remember that I might be the only representation of recovery that someone might see today. Someone will judge, someone might have some opinions about the program of Overeaters Anonymous, and if I am touting those things and I'm not doing things that are aligned with those principles, I might not be able to be of service. That could hurt someone else's chances. So it's really important that I get honest about where I am today, and that this is such a gift. So thank you all so much for being here. And with that, I pass, and thank you so much.
Kendall, thank you so much. What a message of depth and weight. And we're just going to read a wee paragraph. It's Gutter Bravado in the Big Book on page 511, and it says, "So today I'm much more comfortable with life as Alcoholics Anonymous has promised, and I know they're right when they say it keeps getting better. My circumstances have steadily improved as my spiritual life grows and matures. Words cannot begin to describe the feelings in my heart as I sometimes ponder how much my life has changed, how far I've come, and how much there is yet to discover. And though I'm not sure where my journey may take me next, I know I'll owe it to the grace of God and to 3 words of the 12 steps: continue, improve, and practice. Oh, and one more thing they told me: humility is key."